the idea the idea behind this was last week we talked about grief. I talked about grief, um, and moving forward into talking about how we handle the fear that comes from separation or from being in a different place than we were before. So I guess it's kind of one of those. What I found is it's one of those. Um, the next step in the path, I guess, maybe, um, where we, with a change comes fear. When we make a change, when we make a step out of our comfort zone, out of the area that is that is where we've been, um, fear happens there. So, so I guess the goal of the evening, the goal tonight for me was to recognize that leaving a group um, doesn't automatically remove fears or thought patterns. It doesn't take it away. Um, it's formed over years and years of um, over many years. Sometimes not very many years. I guess for some people it can be quick, but for most of us, it's been a lifetime of of keeping us in place. Yeah, fear is what held me back. Same, same. Because there's a concern of being wrong. And we'll go through some of those in a little bit maybe. So the goal is to learn how to identify our fears that no longer deserve the authority or the control in our life. Um, so tonight I'm probably going to talk about going to tie into some things with some scriptural things and some doctrinal things because that's my process and that's where I'm at. So anyway, bear with me on that. If that's not where you're at, I get that. It's okay. Um, so we may have left the group physically, but sometimes the mental leaving is tougher. Like Bev said, there, fear is what held me back from making this change. So it can be hard to make a change when we're scared. um, I found for me, and I'll just kind of share this. I found for me making the change was hard. Leaving was hard, but then every now and then things kind of pop up that take me back into the fear state again. That I can be doing all the doing good, doing well, and feeling good, and finding joy, and then fear raises its head again and brings me back. So yeah, I guess maybe many of us might have expected to feel um, completely relieved or like a really strong emotion when leaving or preparing to leave, but um, reality is sometimes more complicated than that. So we may leave physically, but parts of our brain and parts of our minds and parts of our that still remain inside. The indoctrination still remains. So um, thank you, Dan. And Dan just shared a works-based faith, such as what we've come from, is a fear-based coping mechanism against spiritual uncertainty. So instead of resting in the finished grace of God, believers work to appease an angry God in an effort to escape the dread of damnation. So yeah, that whole um, trying to get away from the anger and feeling that we're bad and not worthy is a huge. It's that indoctrination that it's so hard and almost at times can be impossible to get through. So old fears, that indoctrination, that idea behind can't move forward can really control us for a long time. And well, I guess for me, it's been a, I'll go through something and I'll feel completely through it. And then it'll, all of a sudden one day I'll just have these thoughts like, am I right? Am I okay? Is everything okay? And then I have to talk myself through it. And I love you're still helping me out. Thank you. So Dan said, the worker church has had us living in fear of this moment and time in our lives. We've heard all our lives of the lost out or the hard hearted, those who've lost their salvation, and many other statements made that minimizes or makes it scary to step away. But our brain's threat center has been primed for 10 to 20 or 50 or more years, so that this moment never arrives. So we never get to this time, this place, this position. So, so I just made some notes here of some, yeah. So what does fear look like after leaving? How does it rear its head? How can we tell when it's fear, when it's, I mean, maybe real, if you can feel really real, and fear is real. We don't want to just dismiss it and say it doesn't matter. Um, so, and I think it might not hurt to kind of jump into a little bit of some of these a little bit later, if we have time, or see how it goes. But, question, that we have after a certain point that says, what if I made a mistake? What if I'm doing it wrong? What if they were right and now I'm wrong? Like that anxiety that comes up that can make us question, what's been laid on our hearts to do, whether it's, wherever your position is. What if God is disappointed in me? What if I lose my salvation? What if my family relationships never recover? It's a very realistic, applicable fear in this position at this time for a lot of people. What if I can't trust myself? So these fears that we feel that we've been trained, that we've been had an indoctrination that if we leave, we're lost or we're gone. Those are the things that can, lead us to question some of these things, and it can put people in some serious crisis, some really bad places, and that is not not okay. So fear often disguises itself as caution or wisdom. It shows up in that way. So like going to meeting, going to church, going to whatever, or going to I mean, it could be anywhere. For most of us, it's been in a meeting situation. So it can show up in those are seeds of doubt that plant for us. So Dan, shared also, God has been disappointed in humanity since Adam and Eve. He's also never ever stopped pursuing any part of humanity that wants to partner with him, that want to claim him, that want to be like him, that wants to demonstrate and model his character. Well said. God pursued Pharaoh until it became apparent that Pharaoh wouldn't partner with him. And then God proceeded to use Pharaoh to further his will and plan anyhow. So in spite of Pharaoh, our frail selves will disappoint God, but God has never stopped seeking out those disappointing people to partner with. Yeah, it's, man, I wish we could have your voice on here, Dan. So, so yeah, so I think there's a lot to dig in on some of these, like, what does it look like after leaving? What is it? How does it manifest? How does it show up? Oh, Beth, yeah, I never knew God pursued his children until after I stepped away from the meaning system. And Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's because we didn't ever have to be pursued because we had ourself in a system, we had ourselves locked in that we didn't have to deal with that. We didn't have to find it. So once you leave though, what it does is it brings us to a place of fear of being wrong because we had so much assurance for the years. So, um, so yeah, I guess I'm probably moving on too fastly here, but because there's a lot there. But the next thing I was thinking of, and the questions I have, and I just kind of process with questions, is where did these fears come from? Um, so where did they originate from? And the fear of being wrong. Yeah, the fear of being wrong, of not being okay, the fear of disappointing God, the fear of being deceived. Um, Again, it's that relationship, fear of losing relationships. Um, hmm, Dan, uh, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. 2 Timothy, first chapter, 7th verse. So that's, yeah, that's, uh, yeah. So, um, hmm. Many of our fears um, today can be um, may not be signs of a present danger like today. Like I'm in a bad spot physically or whatever, but it can be echoes of the past indoctrination, the past teaching that keep kind of resurfacing um, whenever there's something that triggers it out. So it's hard because it's not it's not something that we can expect. Um, hey Bruce, thanks for this. Here's a question that I encountered: is God in the room with you right now? He said we all have the 2x2 system deeply infused in us. Do we have the interest in looking well beyond 2x2ism? Yeah, it's a great question, and that I've been out a year and a half, a little over, and there are some days where I could say absolutely, and then other days where I have to really maybe think about it. I have to really process that. So that's a valid question. Anybody else have a thought to that answer to that question? An answer to that question? Type it in the chat. I'd love to hear it because I think, is God in the room with you right now? I mean, yeah, I think there's a legitimate um, there can be a legitimate fear that He's not. And when you're told that you've left Him, that you are no longer in alignment with Him, and that's something that you desire, or you're told that if you leave, you will no longer be in His family, and that's something you desire. Um, that is something that really strikes fear in our heart because that's what we live for. It's what we want. Excuse me. So that, yeah, that the so thinking about even that of finding out, what's inside us, what's deeply infused in us. I like that wording and the thought that it's so hard to always know what's bubbling just under the surface for us in our hearts and the fear that we can um, experience at those moments of doubt, at those moments of a little bit of panic, a little bit of anxiety when they bubble up. Um, So looking well beyond it, I think it's doable. I think it's necessary. Um, Daryl, scholars are leaning more and more towards the idea that the early church was not Christianity, singular, but was instead multiple Christianities. That would make sense given the fragments of scriptures they had available to them and the diverse cultures involved. Yeah, being in one of the one true ways, we deeply fear other systems and their beliefs, yet from the beginning, the one true way was likely deeply diverse. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Dan just said it exactly what I was just thinking. We put God in a very small box, haven't we? So, man, you guys, I can just read comments. You guys are doing all the heavy lifting here. I appreciate it. That's great. Bailing me out. So again, this is another week where I'm like, I don't know, just a dude or was going to be two dudes just chattering about fear and how we deal with it. I think this is where community comes into play because we have, even just on this, handful of people, couple handfuls of people here that are sharing thoughts and putting themselves out there where there's things that can help us to understand more deeply. And we're all in different places. Yeah, that's right, Dan. What are friends for? So, but there's things that like, even in this chat, I gotta, maybe I'm a slow thinker. I got to think through some of these things because Daryl, you guys, Dan, you guys are deep thinkers and I'm just trying to figure it out. So I find Daryl's finished his comment. I find reduction in fear and an increase of courage in that. So that would be like the goal, right? So for me, I found that I had to speak out. I was talking to somebody today actually that I had to speak what was on my heart, and I had to be vocal about it because I mean maybe that was increasing courage, but because it was the only way I knew how to address my fears that I had. So yeah, you're 100% right. It was the thing I had to do. Because if I didn't, so the another part that I kind of put in here was how does fear affect our lives? And I'll just read this because these are the things that came to my head. It can lead to second guessing ourselves, delaying decisions, not being able to make decisions, staying silent, that lack of courage, difficulty trusting others, difficulty trusting ourselves, um, feeling guilty over normal choices, like just making the normal things that would make sense for us, feeling guilt over it, which, as I'm reading through this, these are all things that we were kind of encouraged or taught to do as I was going through my childhood and adult life. People pleasing is a result of how fear can affect us. And then the one that I've gotten through the most, I guess I feel like is, well, it's avoiding new experiences. So I've had a lot of new experiences over the last year and a half that have helped me to grow, I believe. Daryl sharing excellent advice that he had somewhere in 23 to 25 regarding power and fear. Men in suits or mid-level men lean into them. I did, and it works. Fear went from overwhelming and paralyzing to present but manageable. Yeah, I don't know if fear ever disappears. I'm not sure. I guess we'll see. And there are some people. Actually, I talked to a couple of people that have left back in the Alberta days, or or before, and with the crisis up there, and they said we still at times realize, like, we're in the middle of something, we realize, oh, why do I feel this way? And it's because of a built up fear that they have that they're doing something wrong, that it just hasn't gone away. Yeah, Bev, fear creates health issues too. Yes, totally. Mental health and physical health is affected by it, 100%. So, Dan says we have been taught both inside and outside the worker church that fear is bad. Um, in reality, fear is a survival mechanism. It is hardwired into us. We have an entire region of brain dedicated to responding to and preparing us to respond to fear. This natural survival mechanism has been abused by church doctrine to bring us to a point of living in fear. Fear was to help us live, but we were never supposed to live in fear. So great. Yeah. Yeah. It's an innate thing that we were put here with. It's just like the little deer that knows how to walk within an hour, because if it doesn't, it dies. We have that innate in us, and given to us. It's placed in us, I believe. So I think, but so I'm going to try to progress forward a little bit, maybe. So this is about fear, but it also can live with joy. We can experience fear and some fearful thoughts and some fearful ideas and be afraid of something, but they can exist. Joy can exist with it, and freedom can exist with it. So, and then I think it's a matter of keeping it in balance, keeping it in its place in a way. Uh, uh, to just keeping it so it's not controlling us. And I think that's when the health crises, the anxiety overwhelmed, and feeling of guilt, and the people pleasing, and the inability to speak, when the fear becomes so big that it's overwhelming, then it's not controllable. And I think a lot of people have lived and are living in that status. And that's sad. That is not according to what we are called to be and called to do. Some people, is the other side of that. Some people experience very little fear, which, yeah, that'd be awesome. Maybe could have its own downsides too, but it's touching the stove multiple times until you figure out it is hot. Maybe, yeah. Bruce, well said. Fear's not a bad thing. Irrational fear is really bad. Fear tells us about danger. I tell my roofing subtrades, don't step back to enjoy your work. I appreciate fear and guilt. They are touch points as long as it isn't coming from a religious dominance. Yeah, totally. And fear can be kind of maybe combined with respect at times too. Respect for what could happen, respect for the possibility of hurt. But we do have that is it's part of life. It is. So we have to figure out how to process it, how to deal with it, how to allow it to be what it is instead of making it into something bigger, which I think when we're talking about, like, in a salvation standpoint, it can be extremely hard to allow that fear not to be overwhelming, because we're afraid of losing salvation. So yeah, but I love it. Don't tell your roofers to step back and enjoy their work. It's great. Good stuff, Bruce. So at some point we have to face our fear. We have to we have to acknowledge it. We have to look at it in the face. We have to face it. So kind of, I read this. Oh, hang on. Let's see what Dan says. Fear forces the brain to prioritize survival over long-term logic. In medical terms, the amygdala bypasses the prefrontal cortex. This causes tunnel vision and drives excess risk aversion and makes the emotional pain of loss feel worse than the equivalent physical pain. Tunnel vision. Drives excessive risk aversion. So those are things that probably several could maybe understand. I can. And the emotional pain of loss feels worse than the equivalent physical pain. Man, I wish you were on here, Dan, so you could dig into that deeper. Yeah. So anyway, so I was pointing into facing the fears and the importance of it. So I think it's important to figure out what it is, to where it's coming from. It's super important to ask if it's true, if it's real, if it's a real thing, or are we making it up? I have a tendency to kind of make something that could be bad into something that's way worse. I think a lot of us probably do. So ask where it, and then one of the notes was ask what you would do without fear. So how would I behave? How would I treat others? How would I look at God if I didn't have fear? How would I get past the hurt and the betrayal that we've maybe felt if I didn't have fear? How would I proceed if I didn't live a life in a spot where I'm concerned that God might not love me? I think the answer, well, not the answer, but the next step is to take small steps forward. And that requires friends. That requires people close by. That requires, usually, for me it does at least, I'm a people person, so I have to lean on others, and I'm thankful there are others out there that are willing to walk along with me. And then most importantly is I think we have to give ourselves grace to not have to know everything. Everything has been so secure, but so sure our whole lives that it's hard to maybe get to a point where we can say, well, I'm just not sure about that. I don't know. I don't have the answer for it. And that should be we should allow ourselves to feel that. I don't think the goal here is to get rid of fear completely, to eradicate it. It was mentioned earlier, it's not real. We can't do that. We can't eliminate it, but we can stop allowing it to make all of our decisions for us. Or we can slow that process down. Maybe we can decide that you know what, I can, like, if it's a theological or a doctrinal fear that we have, a salvation, a religious fear, that's something that's been planted in us, we can stop and study, maybe call a friend. It's like the game show. Call a friend, talk through it, sort through it. If you're a praying person, pray about it. Figure out if it makes sense. Without the past indoctrination clouding that decision. So truly dig into it, look at it, look past what we think we know, and look at what we do actually know. A couple comments here. I didn't see these comments rolling in, so I was blabbing away. Dan says trauma disconnects you from your innate wisdom, the wisdom that protects you. Trusting yourself means really trusting the boundaries you establish will protect you. And that's what we've had our whole life, right? The boundaries that will protect us. So start small and focus on little wins. Yeah. Say no and stick to it. Say yes and stick to it. Reinforce to yourself that you are worth trusting again, that your boundaries are worth trusting again. Oh, love it. So good. Yeah. And Bev, step one in combating fear, it was to be most concerned by what God knows and thinks about me and to pay no attention to what others think about me. Yeah. Daryl, shunning and the isolation it causes creates an environment of fear. Creating new networks helps reduce it significantly. Yeah, that for me, that was the biggest thing. Experiencing other people, Christian or non-Christian, that showed me love, that showed me care, that looked to me and as their brother, as their friend, and realizing that there's a lot bigger community here than what I ever understood. I took the blinders off a little bit, so that was a big one for me. Yeah. So if you're just coming in, sorry, it's just me. If you're just catching up, so we had some technical issues and couldn't get down on the call, but so you're stuck with me for the time. So, but I'm kind of finishing up here because I had planned on having a little conversations with Dan on some of these things, but a couple of thoughts that I had kind of worked through and thought on. That there are times where I might be in a situation and be like, well, oof, I can't do this. This is bad. Like, this is not okay. And then I have to kind of stop and process, well, what does it mean to be bad? And is this truly something, or is this something that I've been raised to believe that way? And a lot of times I found that there were some situations that I decided that I could not stay in that thing. But then the other times it's like, well, wait, this is kind of traditional and indoctrinated type ideas that I don't need to kind of keep holding on to there. So the fact that an old teaching still makes us anxious does not prove that teaching is true. So it may simply show us how deeply the fear was planted in us, because so a lot of, like, I mean, in the 2x2s, William Irvine focused on fear. That was one of the things he did in Division of the origin story, was to divide from any other denomination, any other preachers, and make them wrong so he's right. And that is the plants. That's the seed that was planted back in 1898 or whatever it was of fear. So fear may explain why we hesitate, but it doesn't have to decide our future. So that's kind of going to Dan with the, if you say yes, make it a yes. Make your no a no and make your yes a yes. So we can make decisions that we didn't know we could at the time. Dan said fear is not a character trait of God. Fear of God is reverence of God. Great point. So if old traditions come up in fear, we know the source of them. Yeah. So if the whole teaching is a fear, to be scared and to be fearful, then we we we've kind of lost the lot. I mean, maybe lost the spirit in that way. It was, Bev. It was the part of our DNA. I agree. I agree. And so some of us left. So just a little closing thought, I guess. Some of us left physically long before we left emotionally. So healing often involves identifying the fears we still carry and slowly reclaiming the freedom to make decisions based on truth, wisdom, and our own convictions rather than our old fears. Not to let that old fear steer the ship. So my own history, fear is pretty regularly pounded on the front door and made me have to slow things down, take some deep breaths, pay attention to what exactly are we talking about here, and then make a decision for myself, and um, yeah, and act on it or don't. So I love the idea that kind of kept coming out tonight in the comments is, fear is not something that we're encouraged. It's something that we're innate with, but it's not a way of that we're supposed to live. It's not a way that we're supposed to continue to be in, a state that we're supposed to be in. So, um, yeah, I hope and pray for each person, as they're processing through, because to not let the fear control. It can be present. We can let it in. I just came to my mind. I remember a long time ago, there was a man I really respect that we were actually singing at a funeral. And actually, my dad and mom, and it was a tough funeral. And he said, sometimes you just got to pet the dog. And I was young. I was so young. But his point was, you can't think about the thing that's going on sometimes. You have to just kind of pet the dog and get through the situation. I think that might apply here. At least for me, it resonates and I haven't thought of that for years and years, but it just came to my mind. So anyway, throwing it out there, but, I appreciate you all. And, yeah, we'll let this be all for tonight. So spare you for any more rambles. So thanks for all your participation, your help, and, bearing with me through this one. So love to everyone. See ya.